Brian and I have known each other for 13 years, 14? 15, sorry. And we became fast friends just around music and art, and he actually was the first photographer who expressed interest in our band and came out on the road with us for actually a long time. So.
Very cool.
And by the way, Brandon was the first one to give me my very first job.
Is that true? Really?
No, but it sounds cool. Yes,
let's leave it at that. That sounds really cool.
No, it is. Yeah. It is true. The album cover was my first paying job.
Right on.
You work for free a lot.
Yeah.
That's the creative process at work. So,
yeah.
Well, here, if I may, and I'm not trying. I know he gets more time than me, so I'm trying to. Speaking of the creative process, the reason why that job came about was when they were filming, and God, that picture is awesome.
That was the biggest show we'd ever played at that point.
Yeah. We had to plan creative process. We had to plan this timing. I stood, he planned it out, and he had like, just go like this with that big crowd behind you. But the creative process for that, my first job was, I didn't shoot. I went to they were recording in a house in Malibu, and I went every day and just shot them while they were recording, just shooting, and I was basically still practicing and learning how to do photography. So I made a stack of prints, and I'm like, that I thought were so cool, and it was like old school rock and roll, like him thinking and writing and on the floor and just real stuff that you don't get to see usually. And I gave him a stack, and from what I heard, he looked at the pictures and said, "Here's our cover and merch and everything all in one."
Yeah.
Wow.
It was. I think mostly we loved having you around before we even saw your pictures, and then we started seeing the pictures. We're like, wow, he made us look cool. I didn't think that was possible.
Yeah, I was super fortunate.
This right here is from, that was from the video shoot, right?
That was from that Italian restaurant. This is from, one of your big video shoots at the place where...
The Ambassador Hotel.
The Ambassador Hotel. Right after this video, they tore that hotel down.
Yeah.
Super.
It was the song called Are You In from the record you were talking about, Morning View. And in the video, we basically staged an adult swingers consortium. Mm-hmm. That's exactly, it's like, wow. We had this eccentric director, and he's like, we want to do this, it should be it's like you're all swingers and you guys are the band. And so we were like, okay, that's a great idea, let's do that. And
I was like, that's creative.
Yeah, exactly. So we all put on nice suits and everything, and
do you remember
Brian
that one?
was shooting. Yeah, I was sad.
Were you really sad?
No, I was just pretending to be sad.
Okay.
For creativity.
Okay, you were creatively sad.
Creatively sad, yes.
Very good.
He's good at it too. Oh, you might want to put him in one of your plays. Watch this. Be happy. Inside.
You might be a director too.
That's pretty awesome.
That was good.
You grew up in a creative household. Will you talk a little bit about that and talk about sort of the creative process, what that was like, and how that influenced who you are today and the great talent that you've become?
Thank you, by the way. I feel like it was, especially the older I get, I feel like it was a real blessing to grow up in a house where I have two brothers, a younger brother, an older brother, and an older sister, and whenever any of us had a sort of a creative whim, and usually it was something visual, but music also would come in as well. Whenever we had a creative whim, there were supplies nearby. It was really simple, actually. There was just a drawer we knew to go to, where there were different kinds of paper and crayons and things like that. And this is from when we were really young. But my mom would encourage us to draw if we were having a hard time expressing what we were feeling. She would just draw it for me. And so a story that I circle back to occasionally is if one of us was sick, she would have us draw what we were feeling and then say, then crumple up the paper and throw it away, And so I used to have some stomach pain sometimes when I was a kid, and so I learned how to draw it was my stomach. I would draw like a circle, and then I would draw these little bad germs with little robbers masks on, and like nailed pieces of wood in their hands, like they were there to do harm. And then I made this little super germ. I was a little kid, mind you, but the super germ had like a cape, and he would go around, and I would draw him going around and like beating up the bad germs. And by the end of the drawing, I would usually feel better.
Wow.
So I think I was in an environment that kind of nurtured that sort of those creative manifestations. Is really what it was.
It's pretty neat.
I think it's really cool. It's something I hope to pass down when I have kids
Right.
someday as well, because I still do it. I'm still kind of practicing those same things, just in more kind of elaborate ways.
What would you draw right now?
A room filled with naked people, probably. Not, you know what I mean, yeah. People are in their underwear, yeah.
Great. So you started, I don't know that most people know that you started out as a visual artist and ultimately became a musician.
Yeah.
How did you make that transition, and can you talk about just the process? I think it's fascinating. Is it the same to write a song as it is to draw a painting or to paint, or draw a picture rather, or paint?
Right. I think that it essentially comes from the same place. When I was a kid, I actually wanted to go into animation, and so I was always drawing and doing little flip books and things like that. And I was almost certain by the time I was like in high school that that's what I was going to do. I was going to go to art school and try and get involved in animation of some kind, like experimental animation. And then we started a band as a literature class project, and it happened to be, we called it Incubus because we learned about the Incubus in class, and my guitar player and I were like, that's a great band name, it sounds so evil. And so what we had to do in the class was we had to compose an original song or a poem and either perform it for the class or make a video, like record ourselves doing it. So we wrote a song, and we called ourselves Incubus. And at that point, we showed the video in the classroom for 20 or 30 kids or something, and then I think somebody asked us to play their backyard party the next weekend, and we only had one song, so we learned half of the song from this band Primus, and then we wrote another song, and then we played them 2 or 3 times in a row at the party. You can get away with that when you're 15.
Right.
But it was just fun. It was just really fun, and there was something about it that felt so similar to drawing a picture.
Right.
And I think that's what attracted me to it. But the way that the type of reinforcement that kept coming back and the feedback loop that started to occur around making music, almost in a way felt like music as a sort of individual entity was seeking us out. That's how it felt, which is kind of neat. And so throughout most of our career, it has very much felt that way, even though we've definitely worked really hard. It's indeed felt like we've been chased down by it, so to speak.
Right.
But as far as the differences between the two, it's really, for me at this point, because I enjoy painting and drawing as much as I enjoy making music, and I feel very blessed to be able to do either of them. The feeling is really, it's about a mood.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get the sense that you hear, sometimes I'll wake up with a melody in my head,
Right.
and I'll grab my dictaphone, whatever it's called, the iPhone thing, and record it and listen to it later, and that's kind of weird but fun, and then it sort of slowly develops into a song that you might hear, if all goes well, on the radio or something. But then sometimes there'll be a blank piece of paper in my office somewhere, and there just happens to be the right pen laying there, and I'll just wander over to it, and you feel compelled to just make something. That's actually one part of the process that I've always found really intriguing, is that you don't really know what you're doing. I'll rephrase that. I don't really know what I'm doing until long after I've been doing it for a while. And I sort of almost wake up and become conscious midway through the process or as I'm finishing it. Mm-hmm. And you kind of wake up and, wow, that's terrible, and start over again. But, just the ideas kind of come out that way. Right. I like that. This is actually right here. This is the Tom's Shoe collaboration I did with my friend Kristen Klosterman, who's a fantastic artist in New York. And we sat in her studio and we laid out these giant canvases, and we didn't even really talk about what we wanted to do. We just had a bunch of paint and supplies and stuff, and we had good music, and we just sat down and started the way I think about it is we just started coloring together, like little kids.
Very neat.
And at the end of it, we were kind of bummed because we really liked it as a whole piece, and then they sent it off and they chopped it up into a million pieces and made shoes out of them. So,
Okay. Oh.
yeah. The shoes came out.
Beautiful.
too.
You know, one of the things that we have decided that we wanted to do is give the, if you're so inclined, give the audience the opportunity to ask you questions. I think there are mics out there.
Yeah,
And I
please.
think we'll pull up the lights, and if anybody has a question, we'd be more than happy to take questions for Brandon. Does anybody have a question?
That's a really great question. It's also a tough one to answer, but I'll do my best. Usually, like I said before, it strikes me that I'm like, there's something kind of welling up. It's akin to like an emotion, I guess you could say. And the way that I know how to express those things, I think the most successfully for myself is to write them down, you know. And sometimes if it comes out in like a phrase or a small poem or something, it'll, like on the heels of it is a melody. And then so it kind of occurs like that, but if I'm being a little bit more observant about the process, I usually have periods of where I'm feeling inspired, and then periods after that where I'm checking everything that I sort of spilled out while I was inspired, and then I go into a period of like just a dry spell where you feel depressed and you're like, I'll never do anything good again. And that's usually when I start like reading. I become like, I get like a voracious appetite for films and books and other people's music and things like that. But I'm 36 now, and having been doing it long enough, I've come to recognize that even the dry spells are just as essential as the periods of inspiration. So my process looks like, it's like research. Then I have these periods of like reverie where I'm like wandering around. It looks like I'm doing nothing, but I'm kind of like, you know, formulating ideas and stuff. And then there's like this unconscious moment where it all comes spilling out. And then after that, you kind of become a scientist and you start checking. Like you start putting things together, pieces of the puzzle, and all of a sudden a song is arranged or a painting is, you know, being finished. Does that kind of answer your question? Cool.
Other questions? Oh. Okay, over here.
Maybe next.
Sorry.
Go
No,
ahead.
that's
go
you.
ahead. Yeah.
When you were moving in your solo album direction, did you know what you were doing? Like, did you find yourself writing music that just kind of didn't fit in with where you saw Incubus going? And what was your intention behind that move in your career?
It was, I'll put it this way. Making music, one of the things that's really fun about it for me is it is creative problem solving, except that you're not being assigned a problem from an outside source. Like you are assigning yourself a problem to solve. And with Incubus, it's been a group solving the problem. And so we can, I think, reach a lot further. And what we do is they basically will create sonic architectures, and sometimes I'll be handed sonic architectures, and I get to sort of climb around on them lyrically and melodically. And it's a lot of fun, and it's also really challenging. And then sometimes I'll present, melodic structures, and they'll create sonic structures around those. But with making music on my own, it's definitely a harder problem to solve. It's definitely more challenging because I'm not a musician first. I think that's essentially what has been pulling me into it, is that I'm looking for greater and greater challenges creatively.
Did you find a compositional instrument that worked best for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I started with guitar. On my first solo record, The Wild Trapeze, I was actually injured and I couldn't do anything, and so I just played guitar a lot, and I got just good enough at it that I could start to do these sort of basic arrangements. So it was the guitar first, but on this new one that I've been working on, it's been, I've realized my weaker spots, and it's usually as a musician, but as a singer and as a melodicist, is that a word? And as a lyricist, those are sort of my strong points. So I've learned to use my voice to kind of dictate where the music should go. And so I'll sing things to someone that I'm working with. Like, do it like this, and then over here I'll put a lyric, and then, I've been very blessed to find people that can understand that language, because I actually don't read music or write music down. It's all sort of felt, intuitive.
Hey.
Hi.
Being a part of a band has got to be a very collaborative process, and a lot of your band members are gifted in other ways other than musically. How have you shared sort of the leadership or decided who takes the reins on certain projects or that sort of thing? How do you share the process?
That's a really good question. It's definitely a challenge being in a band, just because it's mostly wonderful, but being in a band is very much like having another family. It's another chance to cooperate, to have a sort of, a mutually realized outcome. And so we operate very much under a family dynamic. It's like everyone gets a voice, everyone gets a chance to say what they feel and express their ideas. I think one of the reasons that it's worked for us for 21 years is that everybody is really good at what they do. And I think that the times when I've created problems in the band is when I've brought like a guitar riff, but yeah, I've been very blessed to work with the guys in my band because they're such fantastic musicians, all in their own right, but also everyone in the band are sort of multi-instrumentalists. Everybody wants to be the drummer, and the guitar player and the bass player and the keys and everything. So it's like 95% of the time it's just pure fun. I think that's the other reason why it works, and that we're able to share the dynamic.
Right here.
Yeah. There was somebody here that I see, but go ahead.
How do you change personally inside when you're working, just by yourself or another person versus the larger? Like, do you see yourself changing inside and how you communicate with yourself versus someone else?
Yeah, I've noticed changes here and there. Probably most of them are, subtle. There's subtle changes that occur in amongst the process. Songwriting with, I've been working with my friend Brendan O'Brien for many years. He's a producer. He's worked with Incubus as the Incubus producer. And I've been working with him one-on-one. And what's interesting is that because of many factors, one, the fact that he's a fantastic musician on his own, and he's like a pocket symphony. He can play anything and everything, and anything I can come up with, he can play circles around it, which is a lot of fun. So songs kind of happen faster. It's the difference between trying to solve a problem in a group or, okay, it's just you and me. How are we going to get out of here? You know what I mean? Maybe that's a bad analogy, but does that kind of answer your question a little bit? Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah.
I just have a question in reference to your portraits or your drawings.
Mm-hmm.
They're almost like a self-portrait. I see you every time. And you have a style. As if I see you.
You know what's funny is I think that was my finger that I was referencing.
Is it a self-portrait of such? Do you see yourself inside of it?
I do. I see myself in it, not like literally. I don't see my own face in the things, but I see in the drawings the things that I sort of feel and see. And so I guess that if you're seeing that, then that's probably okay. Thank you. I'll take it as a compliment. That's not me. That's me. So I guess that could be a version of me because I was super not angry. I was just frustrated when I was doodling that. And funnily enough, we were in the studio making a record, and
Wow.
It's a very challenging process making an album, making a full album and committing to it. But that's also why it's fun. It's such a huge challenge, and when you start, you're like, there's no way we're going to finish this. And then lo and behold, 21 years later, we have 7 or 8 records we put together, which is cool.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank
too.
you for sharing the questions.
Thanks, everybody.